You're listening to the Sastra Spotlight podcast. Real conversations with founders building from zero. Hosted by Brodie Reed-Owen. Let's get into it. Welcome to Sastra Spotlight. Today we are spotlighting Tina, CEO, founder of CyDeploy. Tina, why don't you kick it off and tell us a bit about CyDeploy?
Yeah, so our tagline for CyDeploy is change with confidence. So to elaborate on that a bit, we help organizations to make time-sensitive security changes to their critical systems with the confidence that those changes won't disrupt business operations. So it's really about helping organizations to improve the way that they do patches and security changes. And it really is about helping them to make those changes faster. AI has many great benefits, but it is also a detriment when AI is in the hand of adversaries. So now when security vulnerabilities are known to the organizations, it's also known to adversaries, and AI gives them the ability to develop exploits exponentially faster. So organizations really have to be in a position to manage their attack surface, their environments, very quickly. And so CyDeploy is really focused on positioning to do just that.
That's awesome. That's amazing, Tina. And what inspired you to come up with this product? Like, where did it come from? What's your background?
Yeah. So I and my co-founder, David, we've been in cybersecurity field for over 20 years each. And so one of the things, like throughout my career, and even when with my services company, T-Secure, one of the things that we found is that there was always this tension between security teams, like those responsible for identifying security issues and gaps, and IT operations teams, the sysadmins, the ones that were responsible for deploying the changes. So on the one hand, like the security teams were like, patch ASAP, deploy the change. We don't want to get hacked or breached. The IT operations teams were like, whoa. We're more afraid that those changes and patches and configurations, they might make it more secure, but we're more afraid that those changes are going to break our system than we are afraid of a hacker taking our system down. So they would put the changes on the back burner until they had time to thoroughly test them for the impact of the change. The problem is that most organizations, when they get breached, it's because of a known issue that just wasn't fixed in a timely manner. And so that was, in my mind, that was what CyDeploy, I initially came up with CyDeploy about, like, how do we make it so that organizations can more quickly be able to determine impact so that they can deploy these changes faster.
That's amazing. Yeah, I hear it all the time that it's known to the company how they got breached. And it's almost like it comes down to a bit of laziness and stubbornness, right? That they just don't want to update these systems. They just want to leave it and just hope for the best, but hoping for the best isn't good enough.
No, it's, and you know, I think that, some of it, we actually had like one investor early on, like say that, you know, CyDeploy, while he understood it, it was not, exciting. It was like boring, right? Like, so a lot of investment has been made in like the fun, fancy tools, the threat hunting tools, the detection and response tools. And there's definitely a place for that. But unfortunately, like cybersecurity investment has been disproportionately focused on those sorts of tools. And they're like the fun, sexy, exciting ones, but it's the ones that are in the identify like your assets and like understand what's in your environment, and then have mature processes around patching and testing and changing. That's the boring stuff. But like, that's where organizations really need to be making a proportionate investment if we are going to change the statistic of cybercrime costing trillions of dollars and cyber budgets being billions of dollars. And that gap is growing. So the whole approach of, you know, detection and response sort of investment and focus, it just isn't sustainable. Yeah.
Completely agree with you. I think that kind of space, that MDR, EDR kind of space, I feel like it's just got a lot of excitement, a lot of time into it. And then actually there's a bigger picture that we need to look at.
That's exactly it.
And tell me a bit more about the product. So how does the actual product work? Is it B2B SaaS? Is it kind of on-prem? What does it look like?
Yeah. So it is B2B. So the two verticals that we're focused on right now are mid-market finance. So those financial institutions with $2 to $5 billion assets under management. And then also the other vertical is major health systems. One channel that we have, which is just kind of running horizontal to a bunch of different industries, is IT consultants. So in terms of how it works, it is agent-based. So say an organization identifies a potential tier 1 system, a critical system in their environment, they would point us to like the initial like core server that the application resides on. One of the capabilities, and this is something that maybe we'll get into later, that David's super excited about and has been working on, is around the discovery engine. So that's where getting real clarity around, okay, it's this server is like the main one, but what are all the other dependencies? What is this server talking to, depending on, et cetera? Because you really want to make sure you get an entire workload. If you're going to understand the impact of a change to a system, then you need to make sure you're accounting for all of the parts of that system. So once you identify like all the parts that are there, the agent is deployed to make sure that it's on each component of the system. So that's the discovery part and like how we draw the boundary. The other part of where we're looking with the agents that we deploy is we are learning. So we're watching and observing how the system operates on a normal basis and what are the uses on a normal basis. And once we understand that, then we can create discrete functional test scripts. So that's where our machine learning is labeling what these functional test scripts are. And those test scripts are important because when you want to answer the question, what might break, you need to have an automated way to understand how it works, how it's supposed to work on a day-to-day basis. So once you have the workload, like the boundary there, you can take a snapshot of that workload. Organizations, they can deploy it inside their own cloud. They can deploy it inside a Hyper-V. They can deploy it on-prem. So they can decide where they want to deploy this copy of their system. And then we can take the test scripts that were created from learning in their production environment, run those test scripts before the change that they're wanting to see the impact of is made to that non-production copy. And then you run those same tests after the change is made. And then there's a diff report that's created that shows like, hey, these uses or these tests will pass or these will fail. Right. And that way organizations have clarity on what the impact of that change is going to be. So they can decide that, you know, hey, that fail is not so important or critical. The patch or the change is more important than that fail. So we'll still deploy and we'll mitigate that failure, you know, after the fact. Or they could say like, that's a pretty critical failure. Let's mitigate that, rerun the tests. Okay, now it passes. Let's deploy to production.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So in terms of your typical scanning product, how would CyDeploy be different?
CyDeploy, it is a patented solution in the way that we have a specific focus on impact of changes. So there's a lot of different components to it, but your normal like vulnerability sort of scanning product, it's exactly that. CyDeploy has that capability to do configuration scanning as well as vulnerability scanning. So your normal scanner would let you know what those vulnerabilities are. They would have like a score, a risk score, like a default. It's not, your normal scanner isn't giving you a risk score that is accounting for your specific environment. Because sometimes a risk score, a raw risk score, may not be reflective of the real risk when you take into account like the countermeasures that are already inside an environment, et cetera. But your normal just sort of vulnerability or configuration scanner is showing you what the gaps are or what the vulnerabilities are. We take it beyond a step. So once you know what they are, our value really comes in with when you're ready to remediate those issues. We let you know if you remediate this issue, this is going to be the functional impact. So the whole point is to position organizations to more quickly be in a position where they remediate those issues with confidence that remediation is not going to break something or cause some other problem. So that's where CyDeploy plays. We're not looking to compete with the Qualises or the Tenables and things like that in the way of scanning, though we have that capability. we're really focused on the remediation without adverse consequence.
Gotcha.
That's our value proposition.
Gotcha. So spotting the catalyst before it kind of blows up the whole thing.
That's right. You hear this term called like shift left, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, let's start putting more of our priority and focus like to the left of the problem. Yeah.
And how do you see the industry evolving from this point, like including with AI products coming into the market?
Yeah. So I was really excited when I heard a podcast session that Gartner did, I think towards the end of last year, like November 2024 or so. I just listened to it maybe like a few months ago, but I was like, man, they've been like sitting in my living room, right? And so the way they're describing the category is pre-emptive cybersecurity. There's a few subsets of capabilities or technologies that they've identified in this preemptive category, but ours is really in that exposure management, right? Attack surface exposure management. And so their prediction is that by 2028, about 25% of detection and response technologies will be displaced by preemptive technologies. And already another statistic that they have is that in 2023, less than 5% of the security technologies deployed were focused on preemptive technologies in an approach. By next year, 2026, that'll be about 40%. So already like that trend it's trending that way, where there's a lot more emphasis on how do we automate preemptive, proactive measures for cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And just on the preemptive piece, are there challenges implementing preemptive security? Because I know, for example, legacy systems can come into play and other things. Is there any other challenges that you've come across?
Yeah, so for our specific subset of preemptive, like in that exposure management, it's actually like where we can help with some of those legacy systems, like those organizations that are still like running Windows XP and in earlier operating system versions, right? A lot of times organizations, the reason why they're slow to make the change and upgrade, they know that those versions are no longer supported, so they're inherently insecure, is because they don't know the functional impact. They're afraid that some application that is core to their business or operations is not going to work or run correctly. And so like that is a prime example of, in working with us, helping to reduce that exposure management. In that context, the exposure is because of the outdated legacy technology. So that is one of the primary use cases for us to help organizations to reduce their exposure.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Tell me about when a customer's had an aha moment after they've deployed kind of CyDeploy.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is we created a freemium version of our solution. And for one of the medical customers that we signed a software license with, they were able to use that freemium version and just even without like the fancy device discovery dependency sort of capability, they were able to see how their different devices were talking to each other, connected, and what that, main device was communicating with and depending on. And out of that, they were like, oh, like, we like this, right? And so I think just understanding that one of the basic tenets of cybersecurity, especially the availability, if you think of like the CIA triad in cybersecurity, where you have confidentiality, integrity, and availability, that availability piece is very much tied to dependency and dependency mapping. And so I think like for that organization and many, it's like, okay, our first start, even before we even get into like the testing part of what CyDeploy can do, their ability to understand that if anything happens to this particular system or device, it's going to have a cascading impact over here. So even just knowing like that relationship is important for an organization. So I think that was a part of just kind of like the aha, like value of dependency mapping and device discovery.
Awesome. So tell me about CyDeploy. What's the plan for the next few years? What are you currently working on at the moment?
Yeah, gosh. I feel like it really seems like the market is finally starting to catch up with this notion that reactive is not sustainable. And so we're really looking at asset intelligence, like really sophisticated asset intelligence, where you can have such a sophisticated learning of your environment, the ability to just ask questions of the environment that is still related to the information that we gather. But imagine being able to, query and say like, hey, I'm thinking about upgrading from X level to this version. What do I need to be concerned about if I do that? Like, that is kind of the direction that we want to be able to go with CyDeploy, and also just be available for any technology, any combination of technologies, from cloud to on-prem to hybrid, and just being able to provide that same value of impact of change. We really want there to be a move of the needle in closing the gap between the cost of cybercrime and cyber budgets by helping organizations to really be proactive in how they're approaching cybersecurity.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it comes down to the education piece, right? And I think once people are educated, they're not as stubborn, and then they're able to be on board with making changes.
Yes.
So yeah, no, that's awesome.
And I think just to that point as well, like where a services element we're finding is helpful is understanding the business processes that an organization has around change and patch management at first, because some organizations don't necessarily recognize that their process is what's a part of being broken. Like a tool, any technology is not, you can't use it as a band-aid to like overcome like bad process. Like even in taking CyDeploy and inserting it, you need to be inserting it into an organization that is taking change and patch management seriously and has testing as a part of that process. Yes, we can expedite the whole testing process to give you that answer, but there has to be a value in a slot of time in their process that an organization carves out for that testing process, automated testing process. Yeah.
Just a question on that. So how do you think companies can take it more seriously? What is the missing piece? Is it an individual? Is it a structure? Or is it not in the
culture?
A culture.
Yeah, it really is a culture. A culture. And, I had an opportunity to talk to one CISO at a large organization. And, his response was, it isn't just a single person. Like, it has to be a culture of an organization that recognizes what the right thing to do is, and that is willing to step away from the industry norm right now that seems to want to say due diligence equals deploying X detection and response product. We've done our part because look, we bought X detection and response product, right? And companies that have a culture of saying like, no, like there is more that we can do. Cyber insecurity is not inevitable in the way that it has been. And we're going to have to be more proactive and diligent in making an investment in the change management, inventorying processes that we have in our organization.
Absolutely. And tell me, so are you actively seeking a funding raise? What stage is CyDeploy at?
Yeah, so we're not actively raising now. We believe we've identified a beachhead customer in the health system space. So we're really looking at getting embedded there and doing a bunch of like learning and expanding from there, and then positioning ourselves for our next raise.
Love that. There's no better use case than a live one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So once you have that, I'm sure things will just skyrocket.
Yes.
So that's awesome. And I'm always fascinated with founders when they make their first hire. So tell me, what was your first hire and why? Why did you decide on that first hire?
Yeah, so the first W-2 hire was actually a developer, a full stack developer. The full stack developer was coming from a large financial institution, very stovepiped in the way that his work was managed. And so he was explicitly looking for the opportunity opportunity to work in a startup sort of environment. And for me, like, I was looking for somebody that was very technically astute, wasn't so senior because I couldn't afford like super senior, but was mature enough in his or her journey that they would be comfortable with being somewhat self-directed, and also be comfortable with the ambiguity of startup life and being the first, hire. And so that's what I was looking for. And yeah, it worked out, really well. I think that there wasn't a need to, have to apologize for not having the richest benefit package, right? Like it was clear coming in that, we're just getting started and this is what that looks like. So yeah.
Awesome. And what's the overall goal for CyDeploy? Where do you want to be?
Yeah. So goal is to like build CyDeploy up, really be able to demonstrate its value and have it be something that's attractive for acquisition. Yeah. So it's build and then have it acquired by a strategic party. We've identified several different sort of strategic buyers that, they exist in a couple of different industry spaces. But yes, we want to be on their radar and, kind of disrupt them a bit. So it's,
I love that.
It's definitely, one where they're like, you can either, beat us or you have to buy us.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's becoming more common now, right?
Yes.
Acquisitions it's becoming more popular. I spoke to a founder a few weeks ago and he relatively new, he's only going, I think, about 8 months or so. But, he got offered 20 million to buy out. Wow. And he asked his co-founder and his co-founder turned around and said, absolutely not.
Because if it's 20 million after 8 months, then what could it be? And
exactly. I think that was just a good indication that it's a
keep going. But, that's awesome. Yeah.
So look, Tina, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I always wrap these up by asking a question. So what's one piece of advice you'd give a founder to starting their own product now?
I think I would say definitely make full use of AI in the ability to prototype and get as far as you can before needing to do a raise, for the cash. That's a piece of advice. And I would also say really understand how ready the market is, because you need to understand how much education and for how long you're going to have to educate and prep and butter a market before the market is really ready for you to be able to take off. So I think those are the two things that I would focus founders on that are starting a tech product now.
Awesome. Well, look, absolute pleasure again, Tina, and looking forward to see what CyDeploy does.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Follow us along for another spotlight next week.